friends, we are continuing our study of the Torah, and tonight we are in the second half of Exodus. So I wanted to ask you guys, what is the cornerstone of a lasting relationship?
Well, I'll go ahead and just give the biblical answer, which is obviously money. Money is what holds us
He's
together.
here for the laughs, everyone. Jeff, what do you think?
It sounds weird to say conflict, because all relationships are going to have conflict. And so if you're going to last, you're going to learn how to manage conflict.
Okay, so maybe conflict management,
managing.
not just conflict.
Well, if you're in a relationship and there's never been conflict, somebody's lying.
Right.
Like somebody, you're just not being
honest.
You're
just repressing everything.
Yes. Right. And even in today's video, it's major conflict.
Yes.
And then it's learning to communicate.
Right.
So that's the communication might be the cornerstone. I also think shared interests. Like
if you don't share an interest with someone.
If she loves to frisbee golf and all you want to do is do arts and crafts, it's a
match made in heaven right there.
It's gonna be tough. So you need to have some shared interests. I really think that's true about beliefs as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
A relationship without that core of God as the center.
Yes.
Is going to struggle. I'm not saying it's impossible. There's certainly, examples of people that have managed a relationship long term that way, but it's not ideal.
I'm gonna stick with money.
Okay. There we go. So for me, the answer is trust, and I think at the heart of trust, and really it goes back to conflict. When you have a conflict, like any marriage, when you have a conflict, it comes back to I trust that person is not going to walk out. I trust that we're going to come back and manage it and communicate. All of those things go hand in hand. And in the second half of Exodus, we find God and the Israelites have just come out of Egypt. He's just rescued them from this generation of torment, of slavery. And God is desperate to rekindle the relationship that he had with his people in the garden. But there is this chasm that wasn't there that is now there. And so he's doing everything he can to rebuild that trust. And so that's what I want you to look for. I want you to look for the ways that God is trying to re-enter this relationship, but finding obstacles in the way. So look for that as you watch this video, and then we'll discuss it.
The first half of the book of Exodus tells the story of ancient Israel being rescued from slavery. And when people say the Exodus story, those are the chapters they're referring to.
But the book has a second half where Moses gives the 10 Commandments to Israel along with these instructions about building a sacred tent.
And what links these two halves together is this crucial story. The people of Israel, they're out in the middle of nowhere. They find themselves at the foot of this mountain called Sinai. And here, God's presence comes dramatically down in the form of a violent storm cloud.
Now let's stop a second and talk about this concept of God's presence, because it's really important for the rest of the book. At the beginning of the Bible, in the Garden of Eden, humanity was in God's presence. They had this close relationship with him, and it was good. But humanity rebels, and the relationship is fractured, and access to God's presence is lost. But God promised Abraham that he would restore his blessing to all of the nations, and that includes this restoration of relationship and access to God's presence.
So here at Sinai, God's presence is now right here in front of them, and it's actually quite frightening. And he's here to invite Israel into this unique and close relationship with him.
And the word used to describe this relationship is covenant. It's like a legal agreement between God and Israel. And it's unique because up till now, God hasn't asked Israel to do anything in return, just to trust him. But here on this mountain, God is going to ask Israel to do something. A lot of things, actually. He gives them a whole set of laws. It includes the 10 Commandments. And if they obey these commandments, they will become the people who will represent God to the nations of the world.
Like a priest would.
Yeah, in fact, that's what God calls them to become, a kingdom of priests. And this is all connected back to the promise to Abraham that his family would become a blessing to the nations.
Okay, but obeying these laws is going to be difficult because there's a lot of them, and they set a really high standard.
Though if you think about it, of anybody in the world who should be able to do it, it's these people who experienced firsthand God's grace and his power when he rescued them from slavery.
And they agree to obey the terms, but then they refuse to go into God's presence because it's still a bit frightening.
And since the people won't go up, Moses goes up to the mountain by himself to meet with God. But God still wants to be with all of his people. And so he says, okay, if the people won't come up here to me, I'll come down off this mountain to be with you all. And that's why he orders Moses to build this elaborate tent as a place where God's presence can be among his people.
And that's why the next thing we get is 7 chapters of extremely detailed architectural blueprints for this tent. It's really, really, really long.
But every detail is important and has some kind of symbolic value. For example, there's all this Garden of Eden imagery inside the tent. And it's to remind you that when you're in the tent, you are in God's presence.
Then we get another 6 chapters describing how they built the tent, which is really just repeating the same blueprints word for word.
Now let's back up, because before the tent is finished, there's this super important story. Moses is coming off the mountain with the 10 commandments and the blueprints in his hands, and he finds Israel breaking the first 2 commands of the covenant.
Don't have any other gods before me, and don't worship idol statues.
Right, and so here we are. Immediately after agreeing to the covenant, they're throwing this ritual party, they're worshiping an idol. And so God says to Moses, you know what, this is not going to work. I should just wipe these people out and start over with you.
But Moses reminds God of his promise to Abraham and pleads with God to spare them, which is a really weird conversation. Why would God need to be reminded of something?
Yeah, it does seem odd, but this dialogue is inviting us into God's experience of grief and pain due to Israel's actions, and he really could walk away. But instead, this God chooses faithfulness to his own promises, even though he knows it's going to cost him.
So we come to the end of the book. The tabernacle's built, God's presence comes down off the mountain to fill it, and in the final scene, Moses goes to enter the tabernacle to be in God's presence.
But he can't. He's actually not able to go inside, and that's how the book ends.
Why can't he go in? That was the whole point.
So when Israel worshipped the golden calf, it was like a slap in the face to God's faithfulness. And so Moses can't just waltz into the tent like everything's just fine. There's a deeper problem still in this relationship.
Will they ever be able to fix the relationship and go into God's presence?
Well, that's what the next book, Leviticus, is all about.
Okay, initial thoughts.
I would have loved to have seen all of that, because whatever that was is awe-inspiring, is blow your hair back.
Yeah.
I also think there's a big cultural leap there of my knee-jerk reaction to something isn't, well, let's build an altar.
Right.
Let's build an idol. There needs to be some God that will rescue us from that. But that was their idea, and that came from Egypt. There's a correlation between the 10 plagues of Egypt and 10 different gods of Egypt, that they were around people that attributed everything to a god.
Right.
And so for a God to lead them out into the wilderness and what they thought would leave them there, they're like, well, we gotta get a new God. We gotta upgrade.
Thoughts?
Yeah, I tend to see the relationship between God and man as just like a dating relationship, and we're like the worst significant other. Like there was a pretty bad breakup in the garden,
Right.
and then it's like, well, they're starting to earn trust, and they're believing. They did the door frame, they put the lamb, so they're starting to believe. So you just kind of imagine like God's at like brunch with his friends, and they're like, I don't know why you keep going back to them, and he's like, oh, they're changing,
Right.
and then again and again, we just continue to just be the worst. And so when I see all this stuff, they feel like they're changing their ways, but yet they're like, I don't want to go on the mountain with God. Like, so Moses has to go and be a representative, and he's like, we're changing, we're doing things right. And it's like he just gave the greatest pep talk about humanity, and then he goes back down and he's like, I just vouched for you.
Didn't I just say that there will be no idols?
Right.
Yeah.
Also, I love the description of the people of Israel being stiff-necked.
Yes.
Like I go, yeah, that's accurate. I'm a stiff-necked person.
Yes.
It takes a lot to turn my head.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that the connection between the two halves of Exodus is this story of the people being afraid to be in God's presence, because that's such a change from the garden when Adam and Eve were in God's presence all the time, and it was a comforting thing. And now it's terrifying. And I think that shows just how far we've come as humanity. And here is the passage that describes that. Would you read this? This is Exodus 20:18-21.
When the people saw the thunder and lightning and heard the trumpet and saw the mountain and smoke, they trembled with fear. They stayed at a distance and said to Moses, "Speak to us yourself, and we will listen. But do not have God speak to us, or we will die." Moses said to the people, "Do not be afraid. God has come to test you, so that the fear of God will be with you to keep you from sinning." The people remained at a distance while Moses approached the thick darkness where God was.
Okay, what is the significance about the Israelites being terrified in God's presence?
Well, I think the saddest statement here is you're terrified of what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been so long, 400 years of separation, that to them, God is terrifying.
Right.
Also, there's some power here that we always underestimate, always underplay. God is this great friend of ours. He carries little sweet lambs.
Right.
And yet, if we were to see God, it would be the response of these guys. It would be the response of Isaiah. Woe to me, I'm a man of unclean lips. We've brought God so far down to our level to where we can understand Him that we've minimized Him.
Mm-hmm.
We've emasculated. So,
Yeah, I think that they get to see firsthand the wrath and the grace, but so back to back. Because like when you think about the parting of the Red Sea,
Right.
For them that's an escape, but for others it's great,
It's a death sentence.
right?
Right.
It's they're so conflicted with, man, this God is good, but we can see what He does. The 10 plagues, we see what He's made of. And so, I don't know. I feel like I would kind of be in their boat as well.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, like, I do not want to, I don't want to do anything where I feel like I would be in direct face to face with a man I had to answer to for being upsetting, for being bad. It's like when your mother says your father's good. Like, you just wait too long.
your father's
And you have to face him, because I was like, I'd rather face mom. I'd rather face him. I don't want to. Moses, you talk. I'd rather talk to Moses. I don't want to talk to you. Yeah.
For me, this image of the people being terrified represents, like, that fear is representative of the separation from us and God. Like, that is sin. That is the seed that sin has planted in all of His people, for them not to be close to Him. But I hadn't even thought about the fact that they just witnessed this extreme power of God in this escape from Egypt, and the pillar of fire and the cloud. Like, they've just witnessed all of that. That was for them. And now it's like going to the principal's office.
Yeah.
Like, they don't know if it's going to be the loving God or the angry God. And so they are terrified. But it's, and God is just standing there saying, look, I just want to be close to you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not my fault that you can't handle that. Like, my love can be overwhelming and sometimes be terrifying, but that's what I want. I want to be in this.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when He introduces this idea of a covenant. And I love that the video said that this is the first time God is actually asking anything of us other than trust, which is what was broken in the first place. And this is where He describes the covenant. It says, this is Exodus 19, 4-6. You yourselves have seen what I did in Egypt, and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now, if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all nations you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be for me a kingdom of priests and holy nation. These are the words you are to speak to the Israelites. Why is it important that God asks His people to join this covenant? Why now?
Ooh, to understand this fully, I think we have to understand what a covenant looks like. It involves the cutting up of an animal, walking in between the pieces and saying, if I don't keep my part of this, let this happen to me. So it's a very visceral, it would be kind of like if you went to a wedding ceremony and the preacher took half the time going, let me describe what divorce will be like.
Right.
I want you to imagine taking half of your possessions, half of the money that you've made in your life.
Bring all of it to the wedding.
Yeah, and saying, now I want you to imagine all of your relationships. You're going to cut those in half. You're going to lose those. And you're going to, and to go on and on about the pain of divorce in the middle of a wedding service, we'd be like, this is a downer. This is like that's the covenant. The covenant here is, I'm going to do this, you're going to do this, and if not, there's that big word if all throughout this passage of, if you will follow these things, it will go well with you.
Mm-hmm.
And so He's saying, here's your side of things. Here's what you need to do. It's the same covenant that He makes with Noah. It's the same covenant that He makes with Abraham. It's the if you will do this, I will not destroy. If you do this, your descendants are going to be like the sand, the grains of sand on the beach. So yeah, this is God setting out what it will look like to be in relationship, and that doesn't even change for us. It's the covenant He makes with David. It's the covenant that we have through Christ. It's a bloody, awful, terrible ceremony, but yet there it is.
Yeah. No, I would just echo that. I think that it's God resetting kind of the expectation of these people. Not that the expectations change, but it's like a focus group. Like, let's get together and we lay it out one time. This is what's happening. Just so it's like there's no confusion of what's going to happen. Right?
Well, I think it is the first time that God says, "This is what I expected you." Like, I love you, and this has never been spoken out loud, but here it is. This is what I expect if you want to continue to live in the grace that I fully give to you. And I give it freely, but I do expect some.
Right.
I think God comes 90 and we come 10.
Right.
It's not 50-50. It never will be. But I think He expects us to do that 10%. And I love that it said, of all the people, wouldn't we be held to that high standard? The laws were not easy. They're not something that we're always going to fall short. But we should continue to strive for it. Now, so Moses is gone, and I know that it goes pretty quickly from, yes, they just got the 10 Commandments and they already are breaking 2 of them, but he was gone for 40 days.
It's a long time.
It was a long time. And not to say that forgives them for doing it, but he comes off the mountain, they're already breaking these 2 laws. How does this, already breaking the covenant they had just agreed to, how does it bring us back to that sin consequence grace cycle that was introduced in Genesis?
Well, it's the pattern that we see throughout all of Scripture. People follow God for a time, and then they do as they see fit.
Right.
Then they look around and see other cultures, other people, and go, "I want that too." And so we're a stiff-necked people.
Yes.
We're hard to our hearts often become hard, and we have to constantly be called back. But and then you think, our relationship, it's the blood. It's the blood. It's the blood of Jesus. And that's not as gross and disgusting to us as the blood of goats and rams and sheep that we're offered continually. But it still is awful.
And you got, being slaves for 400 years and seeing how Egyptians they worship tons of gods, right? So it's just these people have never known anything else except this idea of like a polygamous God system, where they worship if they want, good rice, they worship rice God, right? And so for them, for some of them, they have no idea, no understanding of what it is to just have a monogamous God who's over all things. And so to have a monogamous relationship with God can be fairly new to some of these people. And so it is against their nature to just worship one.
Right. And so you just said this. It's really the same. This pattern continues throughout all of Scripture, and even now. It is the same cycle we go through all the time in our own lives, in our own relationship with God. And so Moses has to intervene, has to go to God and say, look, please don't scrap all of this work that you put into these people again, which I can't imagine how the story would have changed had he just started over from scratch again. And so this is this piece of Scripture that when Moses is intervening on our behalf. Jeff, would you read it? This is Exodus 32:12-14.
Turn from your fierce anger, relent, and do not bring disaster on your people. Remember your servants, Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, to whom you swore by your own self. I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, and I will give your descendants all this land I promised them, and it will be their inheritance forever. Then the Lord relented and did not bring on his people the disaster he had threatened.
There we go. So Moses is intervening, and I think this brings again that same grief that the Lord had with the flood and making that decision, the same grief that he had when he had to kick Adam and Eve out of the garden. It's, I have all this faith in you, and I love you so much. Why do you keep failing me? And in the end, it's, I'm going to keep my promise. I promised that I would make this family line my people, and so I'm going to keep it. And then we get this great description that we just talked about in the character of God.
Yeah, it was our hope.
Right.
Our passage for the whole series.
And this is the first time we see it in Scripture, and I think it's just the perfect place, obviously, for it, because this is God saying, I love you, I will do everything for you, but it doesn't mean you're not going to be punished for the choices you make. This is Exodus 34, 6 and 7. Would you read it?
And he passed in front of Moses, proclaiming, the Lord, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness, maintaining love to thousands and forgiving wickedness, rebellion, and sin. Yet he does not leave the guilty unpunished. He punishes the children and their children for the sin of their parents, to the third and fourth generation.
Okay, why do you think God spells out this description right now?
Again, he's revealing his nature to them, and it's funny when Moses goes back to God, he reminds God who God is, not because of me, not because of these people, not because of anything else, but because of you, because of who and what you are. Do this, and so it's just I think it's a restating of, yes, he is fair and just. He also is gracious.
Right.
And will give us forgiveness, but there's also going to come a time where he demands obedience.
Right.
Yeah, I think it kind of is the asterisk next to the I am statement. When he says, well, who sends me? And he just says, I am has sent me. And then he goes, well, who is I am? And this would follow that.
Yeah.
This is who the I am is.
Yeah.
And it's kind of all encompassing that who Moses knew before. Moses knew that God was just, that God should be feared, but God is also loving and unconditionally forgiving and like all this stuff. But now he's laying it out. This is who I am is.
I like that. So for me to wrap this all up, this second half of Exodus, because it goes through the tabernacle, which is a lot of descriptions, but the reason that he goes through all of that is because he wants to be close to us again. And because the people won't come to him, he's going to create a safe space for us to do that, and that is the tabernacle. And so this whole second half of the book is just about God meeting us in the middle. We're not even in the middle. He's coming so far and asking us to come this little tiny bit. And I think that's how our lives are now. God doesn't want us to come the whole 100% because he knows we will never be able to do that. He just wants us to come to make those small steps in order to rebuild that trust every single time we mess up. And we have to keep doing that. And God knows even in this story, in the story of the Israelites and Moses, he knows they're going to continue to mess up and continue to break that promise. But as long as we repent and keep striving toward that relationship, he's going to meet us. Your thoughts?
Final thoughts. That's good. I agree. I agree with all of it.
Yeah, I think going back to that, I guess you can kind of ask yourself this question in the relationship between God and you. Would you date you?
Yeah.
Right.
Are you the person who do you call back? Right.
You're impossible.
Do you plan things? Do you show up for important dates? Are you on time? Kind of think about that and in your relationship with God, are you putting in the effort that is desired for this relationship?
That's a good thought. I won't add to that.
Thank you so much for joining us. Next week we will be in Leviticus, so we hope to see you then.